Hello there everyone and welcome to a new review on the channel. And today we're going to be looking at a magic book, and that is Quirky Forces by Wardle, a very interesting book that is essentially based on forces but has a ton of interesting premises and tricks to disguise these forces, 50 of them to be exact. And I think this is very interesting and very good as well. So I'm going to make a review for you on this book. Let's roll the intro and do a deep dive into Quirky Forces. Perfect, so you decide to stick around, which means you want to learn more about Quirky Forces. So what is this book? This book is essentially a book of 50 unusual or interesting forces that you can use in your magic. And as promised, having seen the psychology of magic in my past review, this book follows suit very well because it tackles a lot of the ideas that they kind of approached in that book. So I think this is kind of a good flow of videos to go on. So as always with my books, I don't usually perform effects from them, but I much prefer giving you the table of contents and showing you every single trick that I like. And as always, I have my trusty little post-its to do that. So first, let's get into the page of contents. There's a lot. So you're gonna start, I'm gonna give you the main categories here and we're gonna dive into tricks after. So the first category that you get is forces with words. So these are forces using lists, using different ideas of how to position words, how to spell words, etc. So you get a section of forces with words. You then get a set of forces with images, so how to force an image, a picture, etc. You then get a section of forcing playing cards. So this is forcing tarot cards, forcing normal playing cards, forcing cards with numbers, with alphabets, etc. You then get a section of forcing numbers, so how to force a number, how to force a number from a list, from a raffle, from a grid, etc., which ties into magic squares and grids. So this is how to do certain magic squares or how to use magic squares in an interesting way. So instead of having numbers, using words, using pictures, using images, there's a really cool routine here that I liked with the treasure map. We're going to talk about that in a moment. You then get a section on how to build simple forcing gimmicks. So how to build, for example, a forcing die, which is so ingenious. It's crazy. It's an examinable forcing die. You're going to get that. You're going to have how to force with a diary, how to force with a magazine, etc. You then get another section on book tests. And then your last section in this hefty book of forces is based on forces with colors. So how to force like the color red, pink, yellow, etc. So forcing colors and how to make different routines with that. So these are your main categories. And now we're going to go over some of my favorite tricks in the book rather quickly so I can tell you what they are. So the first trick that I really enjoyed in the book, it's a gift. So a spectator essentially chooses a number from 1 to 10 from a list, and then you have predicted their gift in a gift box, or on a picture or whatever you want. You've predicted that in advance. Then there's another trick similar to this, which is really similar in how it works, but it's very deceptive. It's a 1 to 10 force where you have a list of 10 items. A spectator gives you any number from 1 to 10, and you are able to have predicted with 100% accuracy what they would have chosen from the start. And any number can be named, which is really, really fun. So that's another trick. It's really ingenious too. The methods behind these are ingenious. Then there's another trick that is based on forcing a sequence of letters or a sequence of cards. That's very good as well. Then there's a Simon Says type trick where a spectator kind of do as you do, and then you are able to force the outcome of the trick. Then there's one of my favorite forces, which is called With Thanks to Claude. This is essentially forcing a card. I prefer to use this with a tarot card, forcing a card from a specific number in the deck with utmost accuracy, but also making it seem completely random and chaotic. A very interesting force there as well. Then you have my favorite trick of the entire book, which is called Turnover and Force, which is a beautiful routine with tarot cards that use two spectators and they make different choices, etc. It's incredibly deceptive, incredibly nice. I really, really like this routine. Then another trick that I like is the one that I talked to you about, the treasure map. So not to spoil too much, but you have like a treasure map like this in a grid with different items, and spectators make random choices, and at the end you have a small chest or a small coffin, like a pirate kind of bounty, and when you open it up, you've predicted the exact item they were going to choose. Then you have the examinable forcing die gimmick that I mentioned. That is included as well. I really like that as well. Then there's a switching force that you can do that uses a deck of cards and a small little gimmick that you can make, which is excellent as well. And the last one that I really liked is essentially a trick with colors, and essentially the spectator is going to choose a card and it's going to be kind of the only red card in a blue deck, or etc. That type of trick. So these are my standout tricks from this book. There's, I think, over 10 of them. So out of the 50 tricks, there's over 10 of them that I like. But there's also a lot of them that are very smart in their presentation. There's one where you would force a plant on a spectator. There's one where you force names from a magazine, from books. There's very interesting premises. So it's not only the forces that are interesting, here's the premises. Because personally, I would have never thought of a trick where you have a plant behind a table, a spectator goes to choose a plant, and then you tell them, did you notice what's behind you the entire time? They're going to say no. You tell them, actually, there's a plant. Can you turn around and check what it is? And it's the same plant they've chosen. Like, that's such a weird trick, but it just kind of weirdly works and would work for some people. It would be something they would like to do. So it has a lot of presentational hooks, as with the treasure map, using kind of a grid force or magic square type effect with a treasure map and a pirate theme is just so interesting, and it just gets your brain running on how you can disguise your own tricks as well. So those are the main categories of the book, as well as my kind of, pardon the French, coup de coeur. That's essentially what I really liked from this book. So knowing that, let's talk about where you buy this, how much does it cost, and what do you get. So this book is pushed from murphysmagic.com, so you're going to be able to get this at any of your local magic dealers. I got mine from Chris Wardle himself. He sent me this as a gift, but it is 50 USD, which equals 64 Canadian if you wish to buy it like that. It is available at ALAKAZAM Magic, and you can use the discount code down below. And what you get is essentially what I talked to you about. You get 50 forces and tricks inside of a book that runs 100 and I think 96 pages. So basically 200 pages in a hardcover book, which I really like. So it's a really good hardcover book. It's also a bit small, so you can carry this around without having to, to burden yourself with a really thick and hard book. It's very nice and very well produced as well. The images in it are good, the instructions are good, the writing is good, and the structure of the book is good as well. So that is what you get with your purchase. Now we're going to move into the difficulty. So what is kind of the skill level of this book if you anticipate getting it? It is mostly beginner intermediate level. There's nothing super advanced or super hard here. As with most of Chris Wardle's tricks, as we're going to talk about a next book in the next review, most of them are really self-working. Some of them use a bit of a setup to make it self-working. Some of them use pre-printed sheets of lists or squares or grids. Some of them use some really simple alignments during tricks, or some very simple memory work, like remembering a sequence of 4 cards, right, to achieve an effect. So nothing here is incredibly difficult. Most of these tricks, as long as you can have the items that you need, right? For example, if you want to do the one with the plant, you're going to need the plant. If you want to do the one with the tarot deck, you're going to need a tarot deck. If you want to do the one with playing cards. If you want to do the one with the map, you're going to need your prediction and your map. So as long as you have the items that you need, which none of them are hard to obtain, even in the section with the gimmicks that you build, none of the gimmicks are incredibly hard to build. Most of them are super easy, just very simple arts and crafts, like very simple. I could probably do most of them. For example, the forcing die, I could probably do in a second, and you could probably have, if you have a child, your 3-year-old child could probably make that gimmick as well. So most of these are very simple to do and very simple to make as well. Now let's talk about the practicality of the effects. So are these effects practical? And the answers are yes, for all environments. This is kind of going to be touching upon the next section as well, but these are practical tricks. Most of them require simple props, or most of them require very little setup or very little memory work, so they're very practical. If you have a deck of cards with you or a tarot deck with you, you can use these principles and tricks and make a small act out of them. You can use other principles as well, like the principle that tricks with the tarot cards, you can easily do with a normal deck of cards. Or if you have picture decks of cards, you can use picture decks of cards. If you have MSP, you can use it with MSP. If you have the picture deck by Mark Spellman, you can use that as well. So you can adapt these tricks to different things. So if you have, for example, an act of 2-3 minutes with the Mark Spellman picture deck, and you take 3 or 4 routines out of here that you like, you add it to that, you can do a 10-minute act with just your Mark Spellman deck, or just a tarot deck, or just a card deck, etc. Right? You can have that with you and be able to roll around with that. Even if you do stage magic, if you use the principles here, you could literally build an entire maybe 30-minute kind of stage or parlor show just with the tricks from this book, because they're so different and so kind of, you know, none of them are really similar. Like you can force a movie to one spectator, force a name in a magazine to another spectator, force a country on another spectator, force something else on another one. You can do so many different things, and you can build an act from a lot of the things that you're going to learn in this book. And some of them don't even feel like forces, right? Some of them just feel like random choices or random games. So you can really build an act from what you learn in this book, and there's a lot of variety and routines, which is kind of the main positive regarding practicality, is the variety of the effects, right? It's not all using cards, not all using lists, it's not all using numbers. You get a bit of each. So if you take a trick from every section, you can literally build a really cool and quirky show that's going to be out of the ordinary to what most other magicians perform, which is very, very nice. So practicality wise, these tricks are very good, and a lot of them as well, you end clean in almost, I would say 85% of the tricks here, or even 90, you're going to end clean. So it is good in that regard as well. Now, where would you perform these tricks? These tricks are performable everywhere. There's tricks for stage, there's tricks for parlor, there's tricks for close-up, there's tricks for casual, there's tricks that you could do even on Zoom, virtual. There's pretty much anything you want, you can find a trick for your performing environment in this book. So now that we covered all of this, let's get into the positives and negatives. First of all, what are the negatives of this book? There's only one negative that I have with this book, and that is the pages are very, very thin. I'm someone that likes to have maybe that's because I'm pretentious and I'm used to the Vanishing Ink books where the pages are really thick and really glossy, but here the pages are very, very thin. So as you can see, you can even see through them with light, right? The pages are very thin, and yeah, I would have liked maybe a bit of thicker pages, but again, this is just me nitpicking something to give a negative about the book. So the fact the pages are my only negative kind of highlights that I think this is an actual really good book. So that's the only negative. But what are the positives of this? One, you are getting 50 tricks for $50. So you're getting essentially 50 tricks, 50 forces. So essentially I would almost say that you're getting 50 presentations, 50 forces in this book, which would basically put you at $1 a force / presentation for what you're getting here. So even if you use only, let's say if you only use 10 of these, you've essentially paid $5 per trick, per force, per effect, which is very cheap as well. So you're gonna get for sure your money's worth with this book, which is a major positive. The effects are fun, they're quirky, they're kind of out of the norm. There's really nice presentational hooks, there's nice masking on certain forces, there's some nice psychological subtleties. And one of the major points, if you're still hearing this video at this point, one of the major points that I found was incredible in this book is the level of crediting that Chris Wardle does in this book. Every single trick, you don't only get the name of where it's inspired, you get the year, the name, the author, and the book or publication of where it's published. Everything is so well credited that if you really like certain effects and certain forces, he gives you enough resources to immediately go check the original and maybe interest yourself in pursuing more of that type of thinking, which is a very valuable asset to have in such a book. Now that we covered all bases, would I recommend Quirky Forces, and what do I give it out of 10? Would I recommend the book? And my answer is yes, I think I would recommend this book. It has a lot of really interesting concepts, a lot of really interesting forces and presentations, and I think whether you're a mentalist or magician, you're gonna find some uses out of this for sure. So I recommend it. And what do I rate it out of 10? I'm gonna rate Quirky Forces by Chris Wardle an 8.75 on 10. It's a very interesting, a very cool, and a very good book, so I definitely recommend this. And that's all I have to say. If you have any additional questions about Quirky Forces, make sure to leave them down below. As always, I answer most of your questions and inquiries and comments. And if not, I'll see you all in my next review. Have a great one, and bye-bye.